You know, I'm sitting here admiring my beautiful bodywork. I know if any body men are watching this, you're going to say, hey, Ken, that's not very professional bodywork. Oh, yeah, let's just slap some Bondo on here and we're good to go. Well, that wasn't my intent all along, but here last week I got looking at the Green Ghost here and I said, you know, I don't want to wait until I find a parts car. I don't even want to wait until I have to burn off and replace the fender. If any of you have tried to replace a fender on a W116, you know what I'm talking about. It is not an easy job. The glue is so thick you actually have to use a torch to burn the fender off. So I said, hey, maybe we can straighten this out. You saw how bad it is. Look at it here. I mean, this thing was just crunched all the way in. And a body shop, by the way, if you took this in to have it repaired, it would probably be $3,000 to $4,000. So I thought, you know, I'm Dutch, you know, I want to save a buck here and there. So let's bring out the sledgehammer. Let's bring out some pry bars. Let's bring out a hydraulic jack. Get this thing up on the lift, and let's see if we can get this at least pushed out far enough so that I can drive it. So we went to work on it, you know, using the lift, using a jack stand to lower it down to start to bend things out. And then, of course, as we opened up from underneath, we could get in there with a big hammer and hammer away on it until we actually started to get the shape. And even the more we hammered on it, I began to realize, hey, we could actually get this looking pretty good, at least good enough so you wouldn't be too embarrassed to drive it down the road, and it certainly wouldn't attract anybody's attention. And then we got the hammer and dollies out and started doing some on and off dolly hammering, and believe it or not, look at this. Even I'm surprised. We got the hood to line up right here with the corner of the front fender. We actually got this cutout here so that we could form it well enough so we could get the side marker turn signal lens in. And then look, the headlight frame is in and the headlights are in. Now I may have to do a little adjusting. We'll get it outside in the dark up against a wall and we'll adjust these headlights. But I'm going to be legal, and if I wanted to smear some Bondo on here, maybe spend a couple hours and just primer it. Maybe I'll do that just because, you know, this is still kind of embarrassing. I'm not going to worry about protecting the rust. I'll never repair this fender. I would never even recommend repairing this fender if you really wanted a nice looking show quality body job. And this is what body shops do. They just replace the fenders, cut out the hole inside of the inner fender panel, get the core sport out of another car, weld everything in, get everything tacked up and lined, and replace the fender, and on it goes. And I know if any of you have had any of this type of body work done at a commercial shop, it can be devastating to the wallet, to say the least. But for me, I just started to use some good old elbow grease. We call this sweat equity. So in the end, I'm only out a couple $100 to fix this well enough to drive it. Once again, this is not going to be a permanent repair unless I just get too lazy, decide, oh, that's good enough, we'll just drive it. And I'm sure there's many out there that say, hey, just slap some Bondo on there, get some matching paint from the auto parts store and just spray it. That's good enough. You're just going to drive the car. Okay, so I don't know what I'm going to do yet, but you can see that we were able to accomplish quite a bit. I'm going to open the hood now and have you look inside of that area under the battery box tray. Now, right now you can see what it used to look like, and you're going to be surprised at how much we were able to straighten it out with just hammers and jacks and some good old muscle. What amazed me was we were even able to get the hood to open and close and line up fairly well. So you can see now that inner fender panel, particularly up in this area here where it was really crunched, you know, we're able to get the battery tray back in there. We're not going to do any more in terms of the bracket for the window washer tank. But this is good enough, and it's quite a change from what it was originally, because let me tell you, that sheet metal right there was really buckled. Okay, so we'll get this thing on the road here shortly, but let me explain some of the other things we've done and a couple more things I'm going to do before we get out there and test drive this. While we were doing the body work over there, we went ahead and changed the oil, and I want to show you something real interesting here. I think I've got it handy, but you know, since this oil had been sitting so long in the engine, you know, over 7 years, I decided I wanted to get all the oil out, including the oil in the oil cooler. So if none of you have seen this before, it's pretty amazing. I kept the oil that I drained out of the oil cooler. So after completely draining the pan I was absolutely sure I drained the oil filter housing. I have over a half, probably 3/4 of a quart of oil here. Look at that came out of the oil cooler. Now, if any of you have had these old diesels and you wonder why you do the oil change and suddenly within just a few miles your oil's all black again, it has a lot to do with the oil that's residual inside the engine, but a lot of it is because of the amount of oil in the oil cooler that you do not get out with a normal oil change. Now, I'm not recommending that every time you change oil you drain the oil cooler, because you do stand the risk of damaging those critical threads on the bottom of the cooler every time you take that lower hose off. But if you've got an old diesel that hasn't run in a long time and the oil's been sitting in there for years, you do get moisture in the oil and it contaminates the rest of the oil and also just the age of it. So go ahead and drain the oil cooler. And you'll be amazed, just like that, how much you will actually get out of it. So we did the oil change. And I also changed the thermostat. This is very typical on cars that have been sitting a long time. It seems like these thermostats just go bad. I drive this car, run it for a while. It would hardly get over 120 degrees Fahrenheit. So it wasn't even coming up to temperature. And this is really important with these diesels. I cannot stress this enough. If you have one of these old diesels, it needs to be running at 80 to 85 degrees centigrade or 185 degrees Fahrenheit. If it's not running up to temperature, you're not getting complete fuel burn. The engine will smoke, the fuel economy will go downhill, the heater inside the car won't work right. And so was the case with this. It wasn't even getting any heat inside, even though the servo over there is working. So think thermostat. They're not expensive, they're easy to change, and if it's old, just get rid of it, okay? The other thing we did is we replaced the voltage regulator. Notice that the alternator on this engine is aftermarket alternator. And I found that these aftermarket alternators, like the ones you pick up at any auto parts store, are not of the highest quality, particularly the voltage regulator. You'll see it and it just looks really cheap. And you look at that thing and you think, wow, that looks like, it was built in the backyard somewhere. Well, I recommend if you have one of those type of alternators, you notice the voltage regulator doesn't have a name or a stamp or any kind of a part number on it, I would recommend you change it. Particularly, I like the Monarch from Germany. These are the ones still made in Germany, believe it or not, voltage regulators that we have on our website. That's something you want to change on these old engines all the time, because the voltage regulator will leave you stranded. Not so much so in a diesel, because the diesel will keep running even when the battery goes dead. But voltage regulator is critical. And then now we change the fuel in the tank. We have fresh fuel, and then there's one more thing we're going to do when we roll it out of here. We're going to do a diesel purge. This is the very best medicine for old, tired, sick diesels, or diesels that have sat a long time. You're going to get a lot of junk and varnish and crud that's sitting around inside the injection pump and the injectors. So in this case, I'm going to run 2 cans of this through the engine, and then in the next video in this series, we'll take you on a road test.